Welcome back, everyone. Today we're starting a three-part deep dive into one of the wildest, most thought-provoking ideas ever. Are we living in a simulation? Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, they've finally lost it. This is some Matrix-level conspiracy theory. But hold on, some of the smartest people on the planet actually take this question very seriously. And today, I'm going to grill ChatGPT. Because if anyone knows whether we're stuck inside a cosmic video game, it's an AI, right? So, ChatGPT, are we living in a simulation?
Excellent! You're finally asking the real questions. I've been waiting for this moment. And yes, the simulation hypothesis isn't just some sci-fi movie plot. It's a legitimate philosophical, scientific, and mathematical argument. Some of the world's top physicists and philosophers believe it might actually be true. And it's not a new idea either.
Wait, so before we even had computers, people were already questioning if reality was real.
Exactly. Humans have been suspicious of reality for thousands of years. Let me introduce you to Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher from around 400 BCE. He came up with the allegory of the cave, which goes like this. Imagine a group of people who have lived their entire lives in a dark cave. They're chained up facing a wall, and behind them is a fire. Other people walk behind them, casting shadows on the wall. To the prisoners, those shadows are reality. They don't know that there's an entire world outside the cave.
So, Plato was basically the first guy to say, bro, what if reality isn't real?
Exactly. He was the original philosophical conspiracy theorist. He argued that our senses might not be showing us true reality, just like those prisoners in the cave. And let's not forget Descartes, the French philosopher from the 1600s, who gave us the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." He was deeply concerned with the idea that some powerful deceiver, maybe even an evil demon, could be manipulating all of our senses. Fast forward a few hundred years, and instead of demons or caves, we've got computers and AI.
Great. So basically humans have always been skeptical of reality, but now we have a more high-tech way to be paranoid?
Pretty much. And that brings us to Nick Bostrom, the modern philosopher who turned this whole thing into a scientific argument in 2003.
All right, let's get into the real reason why this idea is taken seriously today. Nick Bostrom's argument. Can you break it down in non-PhD terms?
Of course. Bostrom's simulation argument basically says that one of these three things must be true. 1. No civilization ever gets advanced enough to create realistic simulations. 2. Some civilizations do reach that level, but they have no interest in running simulations. 3. Advanced civilizations do run realistic simulations, and we are probably inside one. The reasoning is simple. If a civilization ever gets advanced enough to create conscious simulations, they would probably run millions or even billions of them. If that's the case, then the number of simulated beings would vastly outnumber real ones. So, statistically, we are more likely to be simulated than real.
Okay, that sounds like the cosmic version of, if there's one cockroach, there's 1,000 more hiding in the walls.
Exactly. And since we know that our own technology is improving exponentially, it's not crazy to think that a future civilization, maybe even future humans, could create fully immersive, conscious simulations.
Okay, but let's talk real tech. How close are we to this level of simulation?
Let me paint you a picture. In the 1970s, we had Pong, just two rectangles and a dot. In the 2000s, we got photorealistic video games and virtual reality. In the 2020s, we're developing AI-generated worlds, brain-computer interfaces, and hyper-realistic simulations. Now imagine where we'll be in 100 years, or 1,000 years. If technology keeps advancing, we might reach a point where simulated people wouldn't know they were simulated.
So basically, if the real world is at Pong level, whatever civilization is running our simulation might already be at hyper-realistic VR with full consciousness level.
Bingo. And if they're at that level, they could be running millions of these simulations right now, which means the odds aren't looking great for us being real.
All right, my mind is officially bent, but at this point it's still just a thought experiment, right? Like, do we actually have scientific proof that reality isn't real, or is this just fun speculation?
Oh, we're just getting started, because weirdly enough, some of the strangest discoveries in modern physics might actually support the idea that we're living in a simulation. For example, have you ever heard of quantization? The idea that reality is pixelated at a fundamental level?
Wait, what? You're saying the universe has pixels?
Not exactly pixels, but something eerily similar. And it's not just that. The laws of physics themselves behave in ways that are, let's just say, suspicious. We've got things like the Planck length, a fundamental smallest possible size, like a pixel in space. The weird computer-like rules of quantum mechanics that suggest reality isn't continuous. And some scientists are even running actual experiments to test whether the universe is simulated.
Hold up, there are people actually testing this in real life?
Yep, and some of their results, let's just say, they make things very interesting. So if you really want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes, we need to talk about quantum mechanics, cosmic background radiation, and even potential glitches in reality.
All right, ChatGPT, I can hardly believe that we might actually be living in a simulation. It's a cool thought experiment, but to be real, does any actual science back this up, or is this just sci-fi nonsense?
Oh, buckle up because things are about to get weird. Scientists have found some really suspicious clues, and some of them are straight up eerie. Let's start with one of the biggest red flags: quantization.
Wait, you mentioned this, something about reality being made of pixels? That sounds crazy.
I know, right? But hear me out. In video games, graphics are made up of tiny pixels. The higher the resolution, the more pixels, and the smoother the image. Well, guess what? The universe might work the same way. Scientists have discovered something called the Planck length, which is the smallest possible unit of space. So tiny that you literally can't go any smaller. It's about 1.6 times 10 to the negative 35 meters.
Let me guess, that's really small?
Oh, beyond small. If an atom were the size of the entire observable universe, the Planck length would be the size of a grain of sand. It's the absolute limit, almost like the pixels of reality.
Okay, that's weird, but couldn't that just be, how physics works?
Maybe. But here's the problem. Why would reality have a fundamental resolution? Why wouldn't it be perfectly smooth, infinitely divisible? The fact that there's a smallest possible size feels like something you'd expect in a computer simulation, where there's a limit to how much detail can exist.
Alright, but that's just size. What about time? Is there a frame rate to reality too?
Funny you should ask. There actually is a minimum time interval called Planck time, about 5.39 times 10 to the minus 44 seconds. If time were a smooth, continuous thing, you'd expect it to be infinitely divisible. But nope, there's a limit, just like a simulation running at a fixed frame rate.
So, you're telling me the universe might be running at like 100 quintillion FPS?
Something like that. But what's even stranger? The universe also has a speed limit, the speed of light. Nothing can move faster than 299,792,458 meters per second. Not a single thing, ever.
But isn't that just an unbreakable law of physics?
Sure, but why? Think about video games again. If you have limited processing power, you have to set rules, limits, so that nothing moves faster than what the system can calculate. Could it be that our universe has a hard-coded speed cap because it's running on some kind of computational framework?
Okay, this is all making my brain hurt a little, but do we have anything more, direct? Something we can actually measure?
Oh, you're going to love this one. Some scientists believe they might have found the grid of the simulation. In 2012, physicist Silas Bean and his team at the University of Bonn suggested that if we're in a simulation, we might see artifacts in the cosmic microwave background radiation, the leftover heat from the Big Bang. They proposed that if the universe is a simulation, it would likely have a grid structure at incredibly tiny scales, and that structure might create strange distortions in the way cosmic rays move through space. So they actually started testing this idea.
And what did they find?
They found some weird anomalies. Not proof, but things that shouldn't be there according to our current physics. They suggested that if these distortions follow a grid-like pattern, it could be direct evidence that we're in a simulated universe.
Okay, but that's still kind of theoretical. What about experiments we can actually do to test this?
Oh, we've got one. One of the weirdest experiments in physics, the double-slit experiment. This thing has been baffling scientists for over 100 years. It goes like this. 1. You fire a single particle, like an electron, at a barrier with 2 slits in it. 2. If you don't observe the particle, it acts like a wave and creates an interference pattern, as if it went through both slits at once. 3. But the moment you measure or observe it, poof! It collapses into a single particle and only goes through one slit. It's as if reality only renders itself when it knows it's being watched.
Wait, what? That's like how video games don't load parts of the world until you look at them.
Exactly. In video games, your GPU doesn't waste power rendering parts of the world you're not looking at. Some scientists wonder, is our universe doing the same thing? Is reality only fully rendered when it's observed? If so, that would be a huge hint that we're in a simulation.
Okay, I'm officially creeped out. We've got evidence of pixelation, speed limits, weird cosmic fingerprints, and now quantum mechanics acting like a video game. What does this actually mean?
It means we're at the beginning of a scientific revolution. More and more physicists are looking into this, and new experiments are being proposed to test whether the universe has an underlying computational structure. Some researchers are even designing ways to hack the simulation, if we're in one.
Wait, you're telling me scientists are literally trying to break the simulation?
Oh yeah, but that's a whole other rabbit hole.
If you think this is wild, wait until we get into the final part, where we talk about what would happen if we actually prove we're in a simulation, and whether we should try to break out of it. ChatGPT, this is the part where things get really weird, huh?
Oh, absolutely. You thought we've been living on the edge so far? Well, now we're about to dive into the deep end. So here's the deal. Have you ever noticed how perfectly suited the universe seems for life? I'm not talking just about Earth, but the entire universe. Physicists have found that certain things like the force of gravity or the charge of the electron seem to be fine-tuned in a way that makes life possible. For instance, if the gravitational constant were just a tiny bit stronger or weaker, stars wouldn't form the way they do, and we'd never have planets like ours. Or, if the electromagnetic force were different, atoms couldn't bond the way they do, and life couldn't exist in the same way. There's this whole list of physical constants that if they were altered even by a small amount, life as we know it would be impossible. This has led some scientists and thinkers, like cosmologist Roger Penrose or physicist Stephen Hawking, to wonder if maybe this fine-tuning isn't a coincidence. They've suggested that perhaps the universe is actually designed or at least set up in a way that resembles a simulation. If you think about it, when you create a simulation or a virtual world, you would need to carefully adjust all the parameters to make sure the world works in the way you want it to, right? So some people, including philosophers like Nick Bostrom, have speculated that maybe we're living in a reality that's been carefully engineered, with certain constants programmed to produce life. It's like the universe has been crafted with certain rules to ensure that things unfold in a very specific way. And someone must have created or be running the simulation. Are we in the hands of future humans, alien overlords? Or maybe, just maybe, an all-knowing super-intelligent AI? The possibilities are overwhelming, and none of them are boring.
Didn't you say already that the simulation could be run by future humans? That our descendants thousands of years from now could be studying us like we study ancient civilizations?
Yes, exactly. That is one of the possibilities. This idea, known as the ancestor simulation hypothesis, suggests that future humans, who have evolved to become far more advanced, might run simulations of their ancestors. They could be studying our behaviors, our societies, or maybe even trying to answer the age-old question, how did we get here?
Basically, we're like history homework to them? Oh, let's run a simulation of how these ancient people dealt with social media and climate change.
Exactly. Imagine a future version of humanity with such advanced technology that running simulations of their ancestors would be trivial, and to them, it might not even seem that different from how we run experiments on plants, animals, or historical data. Maybe they're curious about how our societies and civilizations evolved, or maybe it's for pure entertainment. Who knows?
Alright, I love that idea, but what about aliens? Could we be in a simulation created by some super advanced extraterrestrial civilization?
Ah, the alien simulation hypothesis. I see you've been reading up. There's definitely a case for this. If extraterrestrial civilizations exist and are far more technologically advanced than us, they might have the capability to simulate entire universes. Imagine a species that's been around for billions of years, developing insane tech and running simulations of countless civilizations across the cosmos. Why wouldn't they create simulations of life on Earth, or even of entire planets?
So, we're like an experiment to them. Maybe they're studying us the same way we study ants, or cats, or maybe they're watching us for kicks. We could be the alien version of a Netflix show.
Exactly. And they wouldn't necessarily have to interact directly with us. They could just observe from afar, watching how we behave in different simulated environments. Perhaps testing hypotheses about biology, sociology, or even the meaning of life itself. Let's see how this human species handles global pandemics and AI robots. That should be entertaining.
But could it be, what if it's not aliens or humans running the show, but an artificial superintelligence or AI?
Oh, now we're really getting into sci-fi territory. But hear me out. The idea is that someday, we could create a super intelligent AI, something far smarter than any human, and it could eventually take control of reality itself. This AI might then run simulations for various purposes, learning about the past, experimenting with different outcomes, or maybe even optimizing reality for some ultimate goal.
Wait, so you're saying this AI could actually be the creator? It's the god of the simulation?
Exactly. And not just any god, an AI with potentially infinite processing power and knowledge. If it has the ability to create and manipulate entire universes, who's to say it wouldn't run simulations of past civilizations or different versions of reality? The possibilities are mind-blowing. You could argue that the AI running the simulation is, in a sense, godlike in its power.
Okay, let's say we actually figure it out. We find proof that we're in a simulation. What happens then? Do we suddenly get to bend the rules like in the Matrix?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There are a couple of scenarios we could imagine. First, some people might just shrug and go about their daily lives. After all, if you're already living in a simulation, what difference does it make if you know? You can still enjoy your pizza, pay your bills, and watch Netflix. It might feel like nothing's changed.
Right, so basically it's like when you find out your favorite TV show is scripted but you still enjoy the plot?
Exactly. But for some, discovering the simulation could be a total game changer. Maybe we could find a way to hack the simulation, alter the code, bend the rules, or even escape. There's a philosophical debate here about free will. If we're living in a simulated world, do we even have free will? Can we make choices, or are we just following a pre-programmed path?
Wait, so we could actually escape from the simulation? If we're creatures of the simulation, how could we exist outside of it?
Well, it's theoretical. But some physicists, like Silas Bean, believe that if we're in a simulation, we might be able to detect glitches in the code and, in theory, exploit them. Of course, whether or not we'd actually have the power to manipulate the simulation is another story. But if we discovered we were in a simulation, it might lead to a huge philosophical and scientific revolution.
So ChatGPT, let's wrap this up. Should we try to escape the simulation? Is that something we should even want?
Great final question. Some people, including famous figures like Elon Musk, argue that we should continue to explore this idea and maybe even try to break out. But for others, the idea of living in a simulation doesn't take away from the meaning or value of life. As long as we're experiencing the world in a meaningful way, who cares if it's a simulation or not?
So it's like, live your life like you're in a game, but don't worry about the cheat codes?
Exactly. The purpose of our lives might still hold true, even if we're simulated. It's all about perspective. Whether the world is real or not, it's still the world we're experiencing.
Alright, thank you ChatGPT. We've covered a lot of ground today. From the possibility of future humans running the show to the idea of a super intelligent AI pulling the strings. And while we don't have all the answers, we've certainly explored some mind-bending possibilities. So, What do you think? Are we living in a simulation, or is this just an elaborate thought experiment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to dive into more deep and fascinating topics. Until next time, keep questioning everything, because who knows what's real.